Welcome back to the Sharing English podcast, where we explore stories from the English-speaking world, spoken slowly and clearly for curious English learners like you. Let's get started.
Hello, everyone. It's your host, Freya. It's a holiday week in the US and the unofficial end to summer. Earlier this week was Labor Day in the US. So in today's episode, we are going to explore Labor Day in the United States, a holiday that many people see as the last hurrah of summer, but one that also has deep connections to the struggles and victories of workers. We'll talk about where it came from, why Americans celebrate in September instead of May, what people usually do on this day, and how it connects to labor unions, famous labor leaders, and even modern movements today. Labor Day grew out of the labor movement in the late 19th century. At the time, working conditions in the United States were extremely harsh. Imagine working 10 to 12 hours a day, maybe more, 6 days a week, often in unsafe factories, mines, or railroads. Child labor was common, and there were almost no protections for workers. In response, workers began organizing into unions, which are groups that united employees to demand better hours, safer workplaces, and fair pay. These early unions held strikes and rallies to push for reforms. One of the most important moments was the Pullman Strike of 1894. This was a nationwide railroad strike that disrupted transportation and turned violent. Federal troops were called in, and more than 20 people were killed. In the aftermath of that conflict, President Grover Cleveland signed legislation declaring Labor Day a national holiday in 1894, partly as a gesture of peace with the labor movement. The idea was to honor the contributions of workers and recognize their central role in building the country. Now you might wonder, why is Labor Day in the US celebrated in September when most of the world celebrates International Workers' Day on May 1st? The answer is political. May 1st was tied to the push for an 8-hour workday and the Haymarket Affair of 1886 in Chicago, where a rally turned deadly. May Day became a symbol of radical labor movements and even socialist revolutions in Europe and beyond. U.S. leaders wanted a holiday that celebrated workers, but without the revolutionary associations. So they chose September, following the example of New York unions, who had already been holding a September parade since 1882. This decision gave Americans their own distinct holiday, focused on honoring workers while avoiding the symbolism of May Day. Since then, labor unions have played a major role in shaping American life. Unions helped win many of the rights people take for granted today. The 8-hour workday, the 5-day work week, workplace safety regulations, the minimum wage, and protections against child labor. Beyond laws, unions gave workers a voice in industries where they might otherwise be powerless against large corporations. They also became centers of community life, particularly in industries like steel, coal mining, and auto manufacturing. Behind these movements were powerful voices who fought for change. One was Samuel Gompers, the founder of the American Federation of Labor in the 1880s. Gompers pushed for practical improvements like better wages and shorter hours, rather than broad political revolution, which helped gain widespread support for unions. Another was Eugene V. Debs, who led the American Railway Union and played a major role in the Pullman Strike. He later became one of the most famous socialist leaders in the U.S., running for president 5 times. Women were also at the front of the labor movement. Mother Jones, whose real name was Mary Harris Jones, became famous for organizing miners and campaigning against child labor. She was called the most dangerous woman in America by some because of her fiery speeches and activism. And in more recent history, leaders like Cesar Chavez and Delores Huerta co-founded the United Farm Workers Union in the 1960s. They fought for fair treatment of agricultural workers, many of them immigrants, and brought national attention to the struggles of people who put food on America's tables. These leaders, and many more, show us that Labor Day is not just about an idea. It's about real people who gave their voices, and sometimes their freedom, to stand up for workers' rights. You might think unions are a thing of the past, but labor movements are very much alive today. In fact, in recent years, the U.S. has seen a revival of labor activism. For example, workers at Starbucks and Amazon warehouses have been organizing and voting to unionize. Teachers in several states have gone on strike to demand higher pay and better funding for schools. Workers in technology, media, and even universities are forming unions to address job security and fair wages. While union membership overall has declined since its peak in the mid-20th century, there's a growing interest among younger workers who feel that unions give them power to negotiate for fair treatment in an economy that often feels unstable. This modern labor activity connects directly back to the spirit of Labor Day, recognizing the dignity of work and the importance of standing together to improve conditions. But if you ask the average American what Labor Day means today, most will tell you it's the end of summer. Since it's always the first Monday in September, every year it's a long weekend that people use for barbecues, family gatherings, short trips, or just relaxing at home. Many towns and cities hold parades or festivals, and some have fireworks. Sports are also part of the tradition. Labor Day weekend marks the beginning of the American football season and the U.S. Open in tennis. For students and teachers, it's often the last break before school begins, or signals that it's time to get down to business for those who already started school. In a way, Labor Day has shifted from being a political statement to being a seasonal marker, a way of saying goodbye to summer before the start of fall routines. Still, it's important not to forget the holiday's deeper purpose. Labor Day is about more than cookouts and one last camping trip. It's a reminder of the struggles workers faced to gain the rights we have today, rights that were not freely given, but fought for. And as new generations of workers continue to organize, Labor Day also serves as a reminder that the story of labor is ongoing. Fair wages, safe working conditions, and dignity in the workplace remain important issues in the 21st century. So the next time you hear about Labor Day in the United States, remember that it's more than just a holiday. It's a story of workers demanding respect, of a country balancing celebration and politics, and of the continuing push for fairness at work. Now I'm curious, in your country, do you celebrate workers on May 1st or on another day? And what kinds of traditions or activities are connected to that holiday where you live? Let me know.
Thank you for listening to the Sharing English podcast. If you enjoyed this episode, I'd love it if you'd subscribe, leave a rating or review, and share the podcast with a friend who's also learning English. You can find out more about me and the podcast at our website, www.sharing-english.com. New episodes of the Sharing English podcast are available weekly wherever you listen to podcasts. As always, let me know, what topics are you interested in hearing more about? Until next time, keep listening, keep learning, and keep sharing English.